Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Sales. I'm a health promoter with Grey Bruce Public Health, and I'm here today to discuss some of the benefits of risky play. Here's a brief overview of my presentation today. We'll go through some of the 24-hour movement guidelines, what risky play is, what it is not, some of those benefits, some other language you may see in documentation, what unstructured play is, what loose parts play is, a risk versus a hazard, risk assessment, how we can support risky play in our work, and then our Canadian Pediatric Society position statement, risky play in Ontario, as well as some resources that we can utilize going forward. I want to begin our discussion today by recognizing that our work, play, and travel takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across the province. I want to recognize that we are meeting today on the beautiful traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, Ojibwe, Chippewa, and Anishinaabeg, which are covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. I am grateful to be able to work and live in these beautiful territories that have been cared for by generations of people for thousands of years. I want to recognize and appreciate the historic connection to Turtle Island and celebrate the contributions Indigenous people have made in shaping and strengthening this community, province, and country as a whole. I recognize that this land was created for us all. We must take care of this land, and in turn, the land will take care of us. So, as we come together today, virtually, we must commit to working in ways that reshape institutions and practices to repair harms and prevent future harms, and work towards a more inclusive and just future. I want to acknowledge that there is fundamental differences in worldviews of Indigenous and European cultures, values, practices, and actions, and our understandings of outdoor learning and play are no exception. The benefits of outdoor learnings are extensively proven in both Euro-Western and Indigenous knowledge systems. When looking for solutions, it's important to understand that Indigenous perspectives are rooted in place. That means culture and teachings vary greatly across the country. Canada is culturally diverse when compared to Europe, given its many First Nations and peoples. There are more than 630 distinct First Nations across the country. No matter where you teach or learn, you are on traditional territory. That territory has unique characteristics, teachings, and peoples, and it has evolved with those peoples and their knowledge. Today in Canada, there is a growing movement to connect children with nature. Outdoor learning programs, injury prevention organizations, insurance companies, licensed childcare programs, school board districts, municipal parks and recreation, and others are coming together. Forest and nature schools have become an international movement and have taken hold, especially in Europe. As more and more organizations get on board, let us remember that we already have systems of learning in place in Canada for effectively learning on land. The land's knowledge systems continue today. They are intact and they are dynamic. There's so much to learn from Indigenous perspectives on outdoor play, perspectives that are rooted in the very places where all children play today. Let's close our eyes and try to think back to a time when you were playing as a child. You may have been 5 years old or maybe 10. What did that look like? Where were you? What were you doing? Was anyone else with you? Were you hiding or running or maybe building something? So, as you can imagine, many of you were likely playing outside with other kids, not likely parents around. There likely wasn't any set of rules. And maybe you were doing something that could be considered risky or with elements of risk, because that's where kids learn and ultimately what kids find fun. I just want to briefly touch on the 24-hour movement guidelines. So the 24-hour movement guidelines for children and youth launched in June 2016. They are the world's first integrated movement behavior guidelines that recommend the amount and intensity of physical activity, sleep, and limits to sedentary time for children and youth aged 5 to 17 within a 24-hour period. So I just pulled some for children, infants to children and youth. Basically, these guidelines are the amount of physical activity we should aim for each day and per week. Of course, every day might look different, but these are just kind of a general guideline. So for infants, which is less than 1 year of age, being physically active several times in a variety of ways, particularly through interactive floor-based play, and they say that the more is better. For those not yet mobile, this includes at least 30 minutes of tummy time spread throughout the day while awake. Toddlers, so that 1 to 2 year age range, they suggest at least 180 minutes spent in a variety of physical activities at any intensity, including energetic play spread throughout the day, and more is better. Preschoolers, so that 3 to 4 year age range, 180 minutes spent in a variety of physical activities. At least 60 minutes is specified as energetic play, and the more is better. And then for children and youth aged 5 to 17, accumulation of at least 60 minutes per day of moderate to vigorous physical activity involving a variety of aerobic exercises. Vigorous physical activities and muscle and bone strengthening activities should be incorporated at least 3 days per week, and several hours of a variety of structured and unstructured light physical activity. So a lot of that could be covered in their playground time, their recess time, but it's important for us to encourage that throughout the school day or after school hours as well. So this is just a quick question for you to reflect on. Do you believe that children are meeting the 24-hour movement guidelines? So before I give you the answer, we'll look here at our report card. So the Participaction report card on physical activity for children and youth is the most comprehensive summary and assessment of child and youth physical activity in Canada. It provides a comprehensive assessment of indicators using the academic letter grade approach. So I'll reveal here the results from the 2022 report card. Overall, physical activity grade is D. 37% of children and youth met the recommended 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day. One of the suggestions that they make in order to improve that is to include outdoor lessons and movement-based learning activities. For sedentary behavior, this year's grade was an F, based on an average of 16.5% of children and youth meeting the screen time recommendation of 2 hours per day. So I know that's worded a bit funny, but 2 hours is what we would recommend no more than. So some ways to improve that would be to break up sedentary behavior with movement breaks. And we do see more of that in our elementary schools, but could always use a bit more of a break. It also allows children to get out some of that pent up energy that they have from sitting for long periods of time. For active transportation, the grade was a C-. So 46% of children and youth typically use active modes of transportation. Parents reported that their children either solely commute actively to school or commute partially in an active way. For active play, some ways that you can improve that active transportation is develop a school travel plan with your school or consider starting a walking school bus. And a walking school bus is where you get many students together and they all walk to school in a group, and there might be a parent or an older sibling or older child that kind of guide that group safely from house to house, picking up kids along the way and making their destination at the school safely. For active play, we received a D-, which is actually an increase from the F assigned in 2020. and that's based on 25% of children and youth meeting the active play benchmark of greater than 2 hours per day. Some ways we can improve that grade is to provide frequent active play opportunities. As you can see, there's certainly room for improvement when it comes to physical activity. However, these results are important because we're starting to learn more about how COVID-19 impacted the movement behaviors of children and youth in Canada. And we can speculate that there were activities that were lost throughout this time, and this data was all from 2022. So we've kind of recovered a bit more since then, and I anticipate within the next year or so we'll have the 2024 version of this report card that we'll be able to reflect on what things look like post-COVID. This is just a quick definition of risky play. Risky play is described as thrilling and exciting forms of play that may include the possibility of physical injury. It can further be categorized into play at height, speed, near dangerous elements like fire or water, with dangerous tools, and where there is potential for disappearing or getting lost. Risky play is not ignoring evidence-based and mandated safety measures like using helmets, car seats, life jackets, or stair safety gates. It's not leaving children unattended or unsupervised in potentially hazardous situations, like letting them play in the street or in high traffic areas. It's not pushing children to take risks beyond their own comfort or skill level. I'll go through some benefits of risky play. So it promotes creative physical activity and lengthened play sessions. It can lead to improved physical literacy and help children to develop risk assessment skills to help better understand their body and its abilities. Increasing risk and challenges in school playgrounds can also be positive for children's mental health. And the rough and tumble play can help build resilience and conflict resolution skills. Risky play can help to facilitate children's exposure to fear-provoking situations, providing them with opportunities to experiment with uncertainty, associated physiological arousal, and coping strategies, which can significantly reduce children's risk for elevated anxiety. So just to provide a quick overview of physical literacy, it is the motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge, and understanding to value and take responsibility for engagement in physical activities for life. Research has shown that without physical literacy, children can withdraw from physical activity and sport. This can lead to them having more inactivity and unhealthier choices during their lives. Children need to feel confident in activity settings to enable them to be physically active later in life. And this mainly comes from learning fundamental movement and sport skills as a child. I would also like to touch on some other language you may see that is related to risky play. Challenging play is used in some documentation. It actually has the same definition as risky play, but is just used as a less harsh term. Big body play, which is defined as rolling, leaping, swinging, twirling, and spinning, as well as the components of rough and tumble play, like laughing, running, jumping, open beat tag, wrestling, chasing, and fleeing. Big body play is further defined as the very physical play that all animal young, including children, do. Adventurous play is about the richness of young children's imaginations and interests and how we nurture these so that they have the time, spaces, resources, and environments to creatively take their learning forward themselves. Rough and tumble play is defined as a style of play that incorporates a range of physical behaviors that range from running and chasing to tagging and wrestling. By definition, rough and tumble is when children willingly do the following: laugh, run, jump, open beat, tag, wrestle, chase, and flee. And spontaneous play is also referred to as relatively unstructured play and often occurs within the nursery classroom. It must be responsive to the nature of the equipment or the play objects available. It's also defined as an activity that is self-initiated by the child, that is lacking in structure other than that given by their interests and their own imagination. Just to continue on our language discussion, active play, which is used in the 24-hour movement guidelines, is unstructured, child-led, and often spontaneous physical activity that expends energy well above resting levels. Structured play, which is goal-oriented play involving following rules or instructions to reach a particular goal or goals. Some examples of this would be an organized sport such as soccer or Red Rover, following directions to assemble a toy, card games, board games involving rules. Unstructured play is child-led play where children follow their own instincts without a defined purpose or outcome. This type of play is not initiated in an organization, planned, or formal way. It may include thrilling and exciting forms of play that provide opportunities for challenge, exploring boundaries, and allows the child to determine their own limits. So one component of risky play is loose parts play, and I'll just provide another little definition for that. So it's unstructured outdoor physical activity that promotes children to develop skills and movements and use their creativity. So most natural playgrounds have loose parts that keep children entertained for longer periods of time and encourage them to be more creative when compared to the standard kit, fence, and carpet playground equipment. Listed here are just some examples of loose parts that you may see in your work. So natural and synthetic elements like balls, crash mats, milk crates, cardboard boxes, car tires, wooden planks, rocks, boulders, grass, hay bales, water, shells, list goes on and on. But when comparing contemporary playgrounds to more natural play environments, such as offering loose parts play or risky play opportunities, researchers have found that 60% of play episodes on contemporary playground lasted for 5 minutes or less, and 35% lasted only 6 to 11 minutes. No play episodes lasted longer than 15 minutes. In contrast, play episodes on nature-based playgrounds, so ones that include that loose parts and risky play opportunities, were significantly longer, with more than 7% of episodes lasting beyond the 30-minute observation period. So kids are more interested in that creativity element of the play rather than, going down the slide or playing with the monkey bars. A similar study was conducted in Scandinavia at the kindergarten level for children aged 5 to 7. The children who played on the natural play environment had more versatile play, and at the 9-month follow-up had significantly greater improvement in their motor abilities when compared to the children who played on the kit, fence, and carpet equipment, which they call KFC equipment. So I wanted to include an opportunity here to just have a little activity, a break from me talking. So we've already talked about playing as a child. Now I want to get into talking about an experience you may have had with risky play. It could be something that you've experienced yourself or something that you've witnessed during a placement or previous work experience. So included here on the slide are some questions to help guide your discussion. So talk with your partner or small group about what happened, what risks were involved, what made it risky play. Talk about how you felt as the observer, if you were observing the risky play happening, or if you were the child, how you felt. And then talk about how the children or other children felt while they were participating in the play activity. Discuss the skills that they may have been developing, If the play stopped, why did it stop? Is there anything that could have been done to continue the play? And discuss if there were any barriers. So some examples of barriers could be the structures, fears of adults, fears of parents, weather, or any other external factors. When talking about risky play, it's important for us to distinguish between a risk and a hazard. A risk is something that is possible to negotiate and may be appropriate for particular situations and children. What may be seen as a risky behavior for one child may already be a mastered skill for another. For example, how high to go on a climbing structure or how fast to run down a slope. An older child or a child who maybe is more physically developed may be able to climb higher on that climbing structure or run down the hill fast, whereas a smaller, younger child who hasn't yet mastered those skills will have to be a lot more cautious in how high they go up the climbing structure, and they might even bum scoot down the slope instead of running down the slope. Whereas a hazard is something that is dangerous and needs to be fixed, such as a climbing structure with sharp edges or loose boards that could seriously injure a children or child if they were to play on it. It's important for us to involve children in the process of assessing and managing risks. It will help empower them to better understand some risks and how to mitigate them, and may also lead to them taking risks that will improve their skills. For example, in the picture, there's a young girl who looks like she was balancing on a wooden bench and is in the midst of jumping off. She may be learning how high she can jump from or how wide of a wooden plank she can balance on. In certain circumstances, there's arguments against formally involving children in risk management. And that may be true, for example, if it interferes with the flow of their play or if it makes it harder for them to learn intuitively. But given the developmental benefits of play-related risk-taking, some researchers are advocating for safety rules that effectively prevent serious injury and death while helping children develop risk management strategies that are essential to aspects of healthy growth and active growth. Another key point for us to discuss is self-regulation, which is the ability to observe, manage, and adapt our emotions and behaviors to fit different situations. So through risky play, children can learn how to manage and overcome fears. They expose themselves on an individual appropriate level of fear and practice remaining calm while they choose the best way to tackle that fear. So if we think back to the previous slide where there was the girl balancing on the small wooden bench and jumping off, that might have been a fear for her in the past. She may be building that confidence and that skill level for her to balance on that piece of wood and jump off. One of the long-term benefits of risky play is that children are learning and testing their abilities. Children learn self-regulation and how to manage risks. They have greater independence, motor and social skills, better conflict resolution skills, higher confidence, self-esteem, and resilience. So risky play may look different at different ages and developmental levels, so whether that's social, mental, or physical. And one example of this is a toddler just finding their feet may need a smooth surface to walk on to boost their confidence and practice this new skill, while a toddler that has already mastered walking will enjoy a challenge of tackling gentle slopes or even uneven surfaces. Risky play can be incorporated into play at many age groups at various levels of development. And the level of supervision will vary depending on age and development of the child as well as the surrounding environment. Often, as adults, we try to remove all risk from programs and activities to reduce the risk of injury. But risk does play an important function in childhood development. Children need to experience appropriate levels of risk in their play in order to feel challenged, learn, test their limits, and set boundaries for themselves and others. One key takeaway from today is the following sentence. So when we are creating play spaces for children, we should make it as safe as necessary instead of making spaces as safe as possible. Some experts have attributed playground injuries to unexciting play structures. Low structures for all age groups and unnatural surfaces under play structures like a synthetic surface rather than grass or sand may lead to inappropriate equipment use and greater risk taking. And I know I've seen that personally on playground equipments where children are climbing on the roofs of structures because there isn't something else for them to climb, whether that's a natural play structure or built within that KFC playground equipment. We know that bored children may resort to playing indoors or on screens, which has health consequences, and we want to limit that amount of screen time. So this slide is about how we can support risky play at different ages, as well as some possible activities. It's important to note that the development of the child, depending on that development, these activities may apply to other age ranges, and that's just at the discretion of the child care provider or the parent. And activities should be done with close supervision for infants, some supervision for toddlers, supervision at a distance for preschool age, and then some supervision until the skill is mastered for school age children. For infants, using kitchen utensils and hitting pots and pans is a great risky play activity. There's that risk element of hitting the pot and maybe they'll hit themselves, but hopefully they learn that skill of hitting the pots and pans with whatever kitchen utensil they're using. Toddlers, playing with blocks, cardboards, climbing structures like that Pikler triangle are all great. Digging in the garden, getting dirty and experiencing different senses and the smell of the earth. Playing gently with worms and bugs as to not injure them. Preschool age, we've got some more of that big body play, rough and tumble play, balancing, jumping on logs, rolling down hills, cartwheels. That's going to look different for kids at different developmental stages. Running on bumpy surfaces, around objects and obstacles. And then for school age children, we might have them climbing trees, hanging from monkey bars, catching balls that are thrown at them, using tools like knives, hammer, and nail. And of course, some of these need more supervision than others. And depending on the child, they may master that skill a lot quicker than others, and that's okay. We don't want to push anyone to do something that would be unsafe, but just recognizing that some of these do have that element of risk. It's just developing and honing those skills until they're mastered, until it's no longer a risk for them. So we can incorporate risky play into our work by creating play equipment or play spaces that are deemed safe as necessary, not as safe as possible. So we can do that by making small adjustments to our play spaces, like introducing loose parts, which has been proven to enhance children's play experience. It's important to note that play spaces that incorporate natural elements for decorative purposes only have been shown to have no benefit to children's creativity and learning. For example, boulders or rocks that children cannot interact with by touching or climbing. On this slide here, I've provided some questions to ask children while they are playing. We can also ask ourselves while supervising play, what's the worst outcome if they continue? Is the environment safe? Is it free from danger or hazards? Does the child feel safe? Does the child feel in control? If there are multiple children playing, are they both smiling? It's also important that adults continue to be aware of hazards and be ready to intervene if the potential for harm is greater than the child's capacity to recognize and manage the risk. So we can provide children reassurance. Wow, look what you can do. looks like you've got this, but I'm here if you need me. Some questions that we can ask the children is if they feel safe there, what their next move is, and then if you see some kind of interaction between children that makes you uneasy, or you feel like one child isn't happy with the play, you can say, do you have enough space to swing that big stick there? Looks like our friends are a little close. Something like that. Depends on the scenario, of course, but we want to make sure that they're not hurting themselves or others in their play while they're discovering their boundaries and others' boundaries. So I've included here a position statement from the Canadian Pediatric Society, which was released earlier this year in January of 2024. This statement describes the concept and benefits of outdoor risky play, along with its challenges and nuances related to children's developmental stage, individual ability, and social and medical context. Approaches to promote open, constructive discussions with families and organizations are offered. Pediatricians are encouraged to think of outdoor risky play as a strategy to help prevent and manage common health problems such as obesity, anxiety, and behavioral issues. And then there's also been some other organizations that have addressed the need for unstructured risky play in position statements. Some of those include Canadian Public Health Association, the Council of Chief Medical Officers of Health, and then the Canadian Child Care Federation. So we're seeing more and more attention being brought to the benefits of risky play. Along with some provincial and territorial governments, they've called for a shift in strategy to keep children as safe as necessary rather than as safe as possible. And then we've also seen some risky play training included in childcare staff. The YMCA has mandated that for their staff in Canada and have shared the experience of rolling out this initiative on their website. So the Canadian Pediatric Society position statement also ends with some great recommended tools and resources, which I've included at the end of this presentation. So risky play in Ontario is still fairly new, although it's been gaining attention after the Canadian Pediatric Society position statement was released in January. There's been some local news coverage on City News in Toronto. We're seeing more and more forest school opportunities. So as of the time of this presentation, there are more than 25 forest schools currently running in Ontario. And there are more and more public and Catholic elementary schools starting to incorporate forest school and outdoor learning opportunities as class trips. One example is my son's kindergarten class at Eastridge. They've been attending forest school once a month as a class trip. And they did it in junior kindergarten and now in senior kindergarten. So even when it's rainy or snowy out, the parents are just reminded to dress their kids appropriately for the weather and send along extra clothes. They spend most of their day outside with just a few breaks to eat indoors or use the bathroom. They are able to learn about local biodiversity and often build items out of natural elements. Last year, they built a lean-to as a class, which is somewhat similar to the one in the photo. You may have seen it in Harrison Park. The kids were so proud of it, and it allowed them to test their strength in picking up different branches and balancing the branches in a certain way so that it would make a structure for them to all gather under. They've also made a small raft out of sticks and leaves and raced them down the river. So there are elements of risk in all of this play. So it would be classified as risky play in this outdoor learning using lots of loose parts. They also slid down big hills on their bums when it's muddy or snowy and have hunted for salamanders. So there's lots of great learning happening there. And I'm sure there are lots of other schools that are including this as well, but it's a great initiative that we're seeing more and more schools partake in. Children with disabilities can also benefit from engaging in risky play. A study demonstrated that overprotection and lowered expectations of children with a medical condition or disability can reduce their self-esteem and sense of belonging, as well as impede independence. Encouraging children with a disability to engage in manageable risk-taking, so activities that they can assess for risk and control themselves, can promote autonomy and self-responsibility and reduce social exclusion. There's more research needed on the benefits and challenges of risky play for select populations. However, in the meantime, we can make sure to include all children in risky play initiatives by accommodating and adapting play environments. Parents believe that children should be introduced to risks or new challenges in order to develop necessary skills. However, oftentimes, their fears of safety inhibit children from participating in activities that they consider risky. Though parents may have had a positive experience with risky play outdoors in their own childhood, many do not provide the same opportunities for their children. Parents who are risk takers themselves may influence their children to be more risk adverse by supporting risky play. Now, I'm not certain what the skill level of the child in the photo is. However, we have all heard the term helicopter parent. And I'm not saying that's what's happening in this picture, but helicopter parenting is when there is that intensive hyper parenting where parents over control children's activities to try and provide as much attention, caregiving, and protection as possible. This can lead to very little unstructured playtime, which can be detrimental to children as it limits that physical activity and takes the creativity of play away from the child. Now, on the other hand, this could be a child that wants to be able to climb this play structure but isn't ready yet. And we don't want to push them to do things that is beyond their developmental stage. So we just have to know our children and what they are able to physically do at the stage that they're currently at without it being hazardous. Up next, we're going to play a video that highlights loose parts play and discusses whether traditional playgrounds are too safe. So this video outlines how some parents were more comfortable with their children taking risks while playing, and some even admit that after watching the risky play that they were surprised with their child's skills. So just some questions for you to discuss as a group or reflect on yourself. How did you feel watching the kids play? Did you feel anxious? Did you feel excited? Did you feel scared? What risks did you see the children taking? Did you hear how they talked about how the kids were not only taking physical risks, but also social risks, and using what they call divergent problem solving, where they reinvent the equipment as something it was not originally intended to be? How did the kids mitigate their own risks? One that stood out to me was how they added the cushion underneath the tree when they were swinging and climbing. How did the children react to their parents or adults playing at the end? So part of the syllabus for the early childhood education course discusses the current curriculum as the kindergarten program 2016. So I took a look throughout the document, and there is a large focus on play-based learning, and there's also some mention of risk-taking, and I've just included some quotations of that. So play and inquiry are learning approaches that capitalize on children's natural curiosity and exuberance. Cognitive development is enhanced when educators provide opportunities for children to experiment to find answers to their questions, try new things, and take risks. Kindergarten children are engaging in innovative thinking when they take risks to try something they have never done before. So here is a list of some resources for educators that I've pulled together. The first one is a guide to young children's outdoor play spaces, the 7 C's. The 7 C's include character, context, connectivity, change, chance, clarity, and challenge. It's for children aged 2 to 5, and it just discusses the play space and how the design team should not only involve professional designers, but also ECEs, parents, and children. Outside toolkits, outside play toolkits, sorry. There are 3 different ones, one for parents, one for educators, and one for teachers. This is a really great toolkit. It's a guided journey that's split into 3 different chapters, each with a unique interactivity. Each one can be done independently, so you don't have to do the entire journey in one setting. It allows you to think about your approach to risky play and whether there's anything you want to change. It gives you some tools to help decide and develop a personalized plan to help you make changes. The third link there is Canadian Public Health Association Unstructured Play. That's their position statement and includes a toolkit with infographics, promising practices, research summaries, and then decision-making tools, as well as a discussion document. The Appetite to Play Outdoor and Risky Play Online Workshop is an instructor-led interactive workshop to enhance skills, knowledge, and confidence in creating childcare settings that support outdoor play, risky play, and child development. And then that last one there is Association of Early Childhood Educators Ontario Risky Play Online Workshop was offered in 2018. I did link to it. I'm not certain if you're able to get into it or if they will offer that workshop again in the future, but something to kind of keep on your radar if you're a member of that website. That concludes my presentation for today. If I was to leave you with just one nugget of information to take away, it would be to provide play spaces that are as safe as necessary, not as safe as possible. That's ultimately what we're trying to do here when we're incorporating risky play into our children's development. We want them to take some risks. We don't want to provide them with any kind of hazards or anything that would impede their development. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. My contact information is here on the screen, and I hope you all enjoyed learning about the benefits of risky play, some of that language that we use and we may see in our documentation going forward, and hope you all enjoyed. Take care.